Hello, everybody. My name is Mitchell, and you have found Streaming Consciousness, my channel here where I discuss awakening um, consciousness, uh, what we sometimes call enlightenment. Um, a lot of it's just about being present and how to be here in a human body and still be spirit. One thing I know that I've discovered in my life is that we weren't issued a manual, and so maybe this is a bit of a operation manual for how to be here, be in this body, uh, and be completely spirit as well. So, uh, welcome if you haven't been here before. Uh, well, actually, this is one of my early videos, so nobody's really been here before. Um, I'll give you a little bit of background. Way back in 1995, I guess is a good place uh, as any. I went on a bicycle trip across the country. At the time, I had been working in a integrated circuit design company, a very high tech industry, living in Seattle, and I was getting a lot of hits from the universe that this was not where I was meant to be. And boy, I was feeling really disillusioned with my job. I was working hard and not getting done what I felt was uh, productive. I didn't feel like I was growing. I didn't feel like life was giving me uh, uh, anything of substance, even though while I was working there, I was making good money. I had properties, I had vehicles, all the things, but just wasn't um, didn't have dimension in my life. And so uh, there was a time when our vacation went from you could bank it and let it stack up, and then they changed to use it or lose it. And so I had about nearly 2 months of vacation that I needed to use. So I decided I would go for a bike ride across the country. And even before the bike ride, just as getting ready, things came to a boil internally, and something cracked open. Uh, I had what felt like a psychotic episode to the mental person. Thought it was psychotic because that's what it looked like, you know. But what it was an awakening. It was a kind of a drastic awakening, a big awakening where kind of everything that was in the way, it just got exploded out. So it was messy. Let's just say that it was a very messy awakening experience, and that was just days before I left on my trip. So I was kind of frantic getting out of town because I thought that I was losing my mind. And on that bike trip across the country from Seattle to Colorado, uh, amazing things happened moment after moment, day after day. I really was experiencing this deeply spiritual person existing in a very physical world. Uh, for most of the trip, it felt like I was just riding along outside my body, and that I was shaping the reality that was unfolding through the entire trip. And that's really how we do operate. This experience just happened to be um, far more tactile than maybe others. than the more subtle ways that most people experience. So anyway, I got back from that trip, and naturally I could not go back to work. I could not resume my life as it had been. Um, and things just completely stopped on the whole high tech front. I went into a period of introspection that lasted for the rest of my time in Seattle. As that happened, though, I hooked up with a yogi there in Seattle, and she kind of brought me on as her understudy. And she was a little different than what we consider a yoga teacher here today. Um, Her practice was centered around the Sanskrit and chanting and pranayama and meditation. Of course, we did the poses, the asana. That's one of the eight limbs of yoga. So we did the poses, but the poses all led us into what was the awakening piece, the meditation, and the going in. We spent a lot of time doing pranayama and a lot of time chanting in Sanskrit, all the sutras and sometimes the Bhagavad Gita. Anyway, that's a little bit of my background. So from there, I just kind of bounced around. You know, I worked as an artist for over a decade after that, and did really well. Had artwork in galleries across the country. I still do. But right now, I think what I'm moving forward into is working on this owner's manual for how to be here, and this operation manual, how to work within this body. And um, one of the modes that I use, I've started doing a course called The Anatomy of Enlightenment a couple of years ago, and it was all started out just one-on-one and in small groups, but I'm going to be offering that more widely. I also dove deeper into breath work. Of course, the years working with the yogi and doing all that pranayama taught me the very esoteric and mystical pranayamas, but it did very little in the technical aspect. So I kind of went back into breath work, learned what the technical pieces were and what was important and what was actually happening with the pranayama. And along that, kind of discovered the whole polyvagal system. And from there, was able to reverse engineer some of the things that go into the Anatomy of Enlightenment, or maybe this operations manual. So today, what I want to do is just pass on what I call the basic breath. And what this is the basic breath is our way, our physical way of being able to come in and relax, turn the knob down. And the more relaxed we can be in our body, the more open we can be to really connect and channel who we are, and let the spiritual component of ourselves flow through rather than continually block it out. So let me just call let me say what I call our normal breath, and that's normal because it's 97% of North Americans, Westerners in general, overbreathe significantly and mouth breathe, whether we know it or not. So you may not notice, but when you're most likely, while you're driving, your mouth will be slightly open. And rather than uh, breathing into the diaphragm and into the core of your lungs, into the deeper part of your lungs, you're just sort of panting up here in the clavicle area. And also tensioning this whole piece here. This is part of the vagus train of nerves as it comes out of the skull and down into the body. So all of those things kind of get affected. You get nervous headaches, you get tension, neck and upper back tension. We go to massages, but that doesn't help because it's not muscular. It's nerve generated. So we'll give you lots of tips on this channel how to respond and react and change how the polyvagal nerve interacts with your autonomic nervous system, because as we become more aware, we can step in bits by bit into the autonomic nervous system and help ourselves out. The reason we want to step in is this body is always sending messages to the brain, and it's sending it through this vagus nerve. And the body's sending, like, for every, it's 80-20 principle is what I call it. For every 80 messages sent to the brain only has 20% or 20 answers. So for every 4 messages the body sends, the brain only has 1 answer. So the body is still holding 3 questions. So we'll go into all this as time goes on, but for right now, the basic breath. And it's so simple, but it's so effective. So our basic breath is always in and out through the nose, tongue to the roof of the mouth, just behind the front teeth, and breathing deep into the abdomen. Actually, we were trying to do diaphragmatic breath, but for now, we're just going to call belly breath. And we're going to breathe in through the nose and exhale twice as long as our inhale. So we're breathing deep, but we're only breathing lightly. So we don't want to have a big breath. We want to have a deep breath, a breath that goes deep into the body, but not necessarily a big breath. I mentioned before, when we're breathing up here, we're kind of panting. The human body, the Western human, is breathing perhaps 2 to 3 times more than they need to. And what's happening with this panting is we're off-gassing carbon dioxide. Now, we may have a real high oxygen saturation. You know, a lot of people have an oxygen saturation of 98, 99%. And you say, oh, that's great. Well, what's happened is you've off-gassed the carbon dioxide by mouth breathing, by not conserving it through nose breathing. And the carbon dioxide is essential for taking the oxygen from the bloodstream to the cells, the tissues, the organs, the muscles. And so we are going to conserve that carbon dioxide by breathing through the nose, so that maybe our oxygen saturation is reduced, but our oxygen consumption or our oxygen usage is increased. We get the oxygen into the system, into the tissues, into the organs. And the first organ to be affected is the brain. Now, when we're in kind of that panting mode, we sort of stay in the amygdala. That's the fight or flight center. That's the reactionary. That's that rat brain that, or lizard brain, that one of the earliest brain developments. When we begin to breathe deeper, not more, but deeper, and conserving our carbon dioxide by only breathing in and out through the nose, we oxygenate. The brain moves up into the hippocampus. The hippocampus is also stimulated by this ventral vagal nerve, which actually travels right down the front through the diaphragm. Diaphragmatic breathing massages, activates the parasympathetic nerve, the rest and relax. The hippocampus is activated. It's sending out endorphins, serotonin, the feel-good chemicals, whereas the amygdala is sending out cortisol, adrenaline, kind of the anxious action chemicals. So this is important because just like after eating a bowl of soup, there's still a little bit of soup on the inside of the bowl. Same thing is what happens with your cells. So you're panting, you're always in low level of fight or flight or sympathetic nervous system. That cortisol, adrenaline, those things, they leave a little bit of residual in your cells. And so that anxiousness just builds and builds and builds, becomes anxiety, becomes stress, becomes chronic pain. As we learn to consciously breathe deeper but lighter, we process the air differently. We also activate the parasympathetic nervous system with this mode of breathing. And we've oxygenated the hippocampus. It releases the feel-good chemicals, the endorphins, the serotonin, all those other good ones, the melatonin when we sleep, those types of things. That too leaves a residual. So your cells move from being a little bit in anxious mode to a little bit in relaxation mode. And your set point eventually changes. So we're going to use this basic breath as our number one tool to access the parasympathetic, relaxation. If any of you have read Thich Nhat Hanh, you'll notice that they just say, I would say half of their writings and half of their lectures have been breathe in, breathe out. And that's all they taught, was follow your breath in the end, if you really listen to what they're saying. They didn't give you a lot of whys, and so this is what this is. This is the operation manual that gives you what happens when you push that button. And so we're going to make sure that we use this breath multiple times throughout the day. It may not switch over for you immediately. So we need to consciously jump in. Just like the brain only has one answer for every 4 questions that the body sends, we now are assisting the body by taking away one of the questions that the body is sending up. Okay, we're putting it into parasympathetic. We're putting the body into rest and relax. It's called down-regulating. And in our culture, I think it's okay to be down-regulating pretty much all the time. Even while in sporting events, helps you to be more responsive rather than reactionary. But back to the breath, let's try and connect with the breath at minimum 3 times during the day. And so this is also going to be during neutral periods when nothing big or nothing urgent is happening or nothing emergent is happening. We want to create this conditioned experience of everything's okay as we breathe consciously. So when you're walking the dog, you're in line at the grocery store, you're washing the dishes, anything that is a very normalized activity for you and one that doesn't have a big positive or negative connotation. Just oh, I'm walking the dog, you know, an easy, relaxed mode. And we're going to breathe in through the nose, pause. And I like to do either a 2 or a 3 count in. So it's in, 2, pause. And then a 4 count out if you've done a 2 count in. So always exhale twice as long as you inhale. So it could be a in, 2, pause, out, 2, 3, 4, pause, in. And I mean, it's as few as 3 to 5 cycles of this breath will start to calm you down. And 3 times a day starts to create a new set point for you. We want to create that set point of rest and relax rather than of mild anxiousness. I'm going to go into, of course, all of these things in depth as time goes on, but for today, we're going to work with the basic breath and begin to recast our set point to relaxation. Thank you so much for being with me here. Again, my name is Mitch, or Mitchell. This is Streaming Consciousness. Please like and subscribe. We're going to be giving tips. We're going to be unveiling the operator's manual for this mechanism, for being a spiritual being in a human body at this time on this planet. You all have a wonderful day, and remember, breathe in, breathe out. Bye-bye.